Hello, 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 and welcome to Property Game Changers live on the Property Game Changers Facebook page, where we are each week in conversation with people who've changed the game in property. And tonight, I am beside myself with excitement because I have with me somebody who I have been following for years and who, if you have any interest in property, you will know of. And we are celebrating the power of ethical property investing. We are debunking the myth that you need a lot of money to get started in property. And we're inspiring each other to believe bigger, to be bolder, and to be game changers for good. And our property game changer this evening is the inspiring Susannah Cole of the Good Property Company, who has given up her Friday evening to us to join us all the way from Barcelona. And we're so excited. Now, Susannah started in property at the age of 22, and she always knew that she had that entrepreneurial spirit, and she started her business from her kitchen table as a single mom. And that was so inspiring to me because I was also a single mom. I did not start a multi-million pound business, but I'm hugely inspired by what Susannah achieved and the doors that she opened for women in property, mainly or oftentimes in our minds. And in the first 3 months as a deal packager, she made £12,000 from her kitchen table, which is just mind-blowing. And she went on to source, buy or let out more than 200 properties with a value of 45 million and agreed purchase price of 30 million. She then invested her capital and built her multi-million pound property business consisting of HMOs, single lets and service accommodation. I'm sure we'll get into some of those investments in a moment. So grab a cup of coffee. I'm celebrating this evening's event with a glass of wine and join us as we talk to property game changer Susannah Cole. Welcome, Susannah.
Well, you're infectious. I'm just sitting here smiling. This is great. Look at this smile. Look at this energy. This is nice to be here. Yes.
When we say goodbye at the end, Susannah, do stay on for a couple of minutes. It just reminded me. Thank you for joining us this evening, because I've chosen a very unsociable hour of the day, Friday evening. And what time is it there right now?
It's 1 hour extra, so it's 8:05.
Oh,
so
right.
People are even thinking. I mean, they're still doing business, because they have siestas for 2 or 3 hours in the middle of the day, and then they reopen at maybe 5:30.
Very sensible, and then eat quite late.
Yeah, very late. Yes.
So, Susannah, as I mentioned, have been following you for a long time, hidden from a distance. And I really feel that I know quite a bit about you. I've been somewhat of a stalker, but I would love to know, and hopefully this isn't too difficult question, but what 3 words would you use to describe yourself? You'll be glad you've got your wine now.
Well, I know what 3 words that a friend of mine who I love to bits as a human, Kevin Wright, the ninja with the yellow.
Yes.
So when Kevin is a truth teller, and he's a very, very kind person. And but it wasn't very complimentary, but it wasn't meant in a bad way. He said, when he first met me years ago, he said, "I've heard about you." I was like, "Oh, have you? What have you heard?" And he said, "You're very, very decent. You're very, very nice, but you're a little tank." And I was like, "Oh, I'm 5'2". I've got long hair. I like makeup. I would love not to be called a tank, but unfortunately, right."
Yes.
It fits. Meaning, I just decide where I'm going to go, and I go there. And Kevin is a very kind soul, so he didn't mean anything bad by it, but he's truth-telling. So basically determined, I would say. Yes.
Yeah, and that's the number one quality, I think. And we've already had a couple of people. Maureen is saying, "Hi, Susannah. Thank you so much for giving us your time." And we've also got Sarah, who you mentioned earlier, and saying hello.
I was just mentioning you, Sarah, before we came on. Nice to see you. See you soon.
You were. And one of the things that really made me connect with you just before I ever really got involved in property myself is that you you've got family, and that's what sort of gave you the drive to get started in this and go past all the fears and all the ups and downs. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, they're now 27 and 23. And he is in this, we're in an Airbnb in Barcelona right now, and he is actually next door about to go out with his friends. So you might see this 6-foot lad walk past, but they were young. So I started my first business when I was 22, and I did family houses because I was head of household since they were really quite young. And I like to call it head of household just because I'm a little bit older than you, and a single parent in that day was quite a pejorative term, and I'm not in anybody being pejorative to somebody who's taking on board all the responsibility and the love and the hugs and the, like, I just was like, that's just a weird dynamic, not having it. So that's why I like to use the term head of household. And what it meant was, when you're managing fine, but you do lie in a bed at night just going, wow, if anything happened to me. I mean, really close to my parents. Love my sister to bits. We're a close family, but they're my responsibilities, and so if anything happens to me, it could happen to them. And I think it's always, sometimes, isn't it, you would often do more for people you love than maybe you would do for yourself. So it was really useful in a kind of, and also the other part was very practical. When they were little, because I worked in the daytime, I just wanted to be at home in the evening. And of course, when they're little, you give them a bath, you put them to bed, they're beautiful and soft, and you breathe in their breath, and then they fall asleep. And then what you do,
Yeah.
So what I started to do was do up houses. So the poor kids, like, I would buy these lovely old big houses that we could barely afford. And when they were in bed at night, I would be doing these houses up because I'm either going to watch telly because I've got to be at home because they're asleep. So I might as well do something because I'm quite energetic. So I would spend a couple of years doing these houses up, make them completely beautiful, sell them for double what I bought them for, and then we'd move and go do the same thing again. They were little, so I think it was both an emotional pull and a massive mama bear protective streak, but also, I can't really go out because I choose not to, because I want to be with them, and I want to have them, and I want to put them to bed, and so I might as well do something. And let's do a
It's an amazing thing to do. And I didn't know that part, actually. I thought that you just started building up your portfolio beyond your own house that you were living in. But I love that you were doing up your own houses before even that.
Yeah, because you have to kind of flip. I ran, for the first 7 years, I ran a fair trade business, which is brilliant in many ways. And I built it from like a little market stall to 5 shops. However, I'm only giggling because that gorgeous black and white view of the world when you're young, and for anyone who's listening who's in their early 20s, I completely salute you. But when like the world is black and white and you're so sure about everything. So I was to save the world through fair trade, through selling, Guatemalan worry dolls at, $1.95 a box, and then you're like, hang on, I'm trying to save the world, but I'm increasing consumerism, and I'm not knocking fair trade. I think fair trade's amazing. So I ran fair trade businesses for 7 years first, but at the same time flipped 3 houses, bop, and doubled each time, which then gave me a bit of equity to then start to invest in.
It's a fantastic way to start. It's called in America house hacking. Well, actually, there's something slightly different that's called house hacking, where you buy a house that's a bit bigger than what you need and you rent out the other rooms and you live in it. But that's not what you were doing. You were buying a house a bit bigger than what you need, doing it up, selling it, moving on. Both are really fantastic ways of getting started if you can afford to buy the first house. And one of my favorite men is on, and I know yours as well.
You're well. Good. The last time David and I texted, he was really ill. Nice to see you, David. Hello.
Yeah. Hi, David.
Just full stop. Yes.
He's not very far away from me, so really nice to see.
It's fab. And I think on that flip, sorry, jumping in, but that flipping strategy was different. Later on, I did a second flipping strategy. So that was a bespoke flipping strategy because I had time. So I would go to the reclamation yards, and I would, everything just to die for, like just utter. We didn't have Instagram then, but it was massively Instagrammable. You know, there was a 1880s Colonel's bath that, you know, I had a van and I lugged old radiators back, and, you know, I built a rose garden and 20 willow arches and, you know, all of that stuff. So everything was really bespoke. And what's really fascinating when you do a flipping strategy that's very bespoke and very chosen and very one of a kind is not always, so you can't always count on it, but people get into a bidding war. So
yes.
One of my 3 houses went on sale for 225,000 quid. And this was after just literally as Lehman Brothers went down in 2008. So like a terrible time to sell. Yeah, terrible time to sell. I got 325,000 for it. Because I know, literally in the worst recession that we've known for such a long, because it was so that's, you can't count on it. So I can't say you'll always get 100 grand more, but because it was so bespoke, if somebody wants it, they're desperate for it because they can't replicate it down the road. So the first person bid, I shouldn't say just in case they're watching, but the first person bid 30 grand over asking price, and the second person bid 100 grand over asking price, 70 grand more than their competitor. Great. I took that bid.
Well, that was Scotland, because I lived in Scotland for 15 years. So I wasn't so heavily involved in property in that time. But I did know that they had the sealed bids, and it was still on the ascendancy, because even though the Lehman Brothers have gone down, it still takes a while before it comes down into the normal marketplace. So and as I always say, because do you know what I noticed, Susannah? There's a people come on and they say, do you know what? I was just lucky. No, you were playing the game. You were on the pitch. You were taking the risk, and you were rewarded for that. We're not always rewarded for taking risk.
No. I have had disasters as well. But the other flipping strategy I did later was a cookie cutter one where you're fast in, fast out. So there's 2 different ways of flipping, isn't there?
Yeah, and you're known as, well, you're known as many things, but one of them is the Queen of Bee. I'm never sure how many R's to put onto it, but
yes,
quite a lot of R's.
Yes, getting them.
So you got into it, Susannah, because of family.
Yes.
Well, not only because of family and because of you, because you had that drive. You wanted to be in charge. You were head of households. You wanted to make it happen, and you thought you could. And I so admire that as well. So let's talk about the next obstacle, because you got around it so beautifully, and that is the thing that people always do, which is they run out of money. And so let's talk a little bit about raising finance and how you managed to build an empire.
Well, do you remember that description about Kevin Wright saying that I was a tank? And I took that kindly because he meant it kindly. I don't like to be stopped.
Yeah.
So, I think that's I'll politely not like to be stopped, but I don't like. So what happened was, at the time, and for anybody who's new in property, just to look back at those days and think, I wish I was there. People could refinance, same day refinance. Right? So when I got into it, I was like, right, are we all right for audio? It's just feedbacking. I can always put my headset on if you prefer. Let me know if you need it. When I got into it, you bought discounted and you could same day refinance. And just as I got going with my £60,000 I took out of my personal mortgage, you know, huge risk, really, really worried, not sleeping, what am I doing? The government changed the rules. So the mortgage changed the rules and said there was a 6-month rule. And I was so affronted by being stopped, because I had written this beautiful 16-page business plan. I spent a year planning what I was going to do. And then they stopped me. And you can imagine I wasn't best pleased. So the luck was that I had previously had a job as the marketing director of the SS Great Britain, which is just an amazing museum, an amazing heritage museum in Bristol. And when I got the job, I was kind of then told, by the way, you're in charge of fundraising. What? What? Wasn't quite part of the spec when I went for the job. So ended up with these amazing people, particularly a woman called Vanessa, who was so good at her job. She taught me how to fundraise, even though I was technically her boss. So I could never pretend I did her work. She was amazing. So I had been in a kind of charitable but corporate type charitable job, observing this highly skilled fundraiser for whom fundraising was a norm. So when they stopped me, because I took it personally, I was like, well, I'm just going to take on board all of the skills that I've seen Vanessa deliver for the museum, and I'm going to raise money. And I did 600 grand in 14 weeks. And I kept going.
I mean, it just blows my mind. But it is a mindset. It is a mindset, and you had seen it done, and
Yes.
also you had self-belief because you've done these crazy things. You've had the children, and done all these things yourself, and sold the properties 100 grand above. So
Yes.
you're building. You're
Yes.
building.
You are terrified. For anybody that's thinking, oh, that was smooth. No, you are terrified and you're not sleeping. Let me be really frank. It sounds a lot, and it is a lot. And, my voice was like, I was unable to speak. It's like, oh, thank you very much for the money, terrified. But on average, when you run a fundraising campaign for property, on average, people will give you 50 grand. So every 50 grand is one person. On an average, that's 1 in 10 people you meet in property has money. And 1 in 2 will say yes to you, and 1 in 2 will say no. So you need 20 business cards to get 50 grand. So 600 grand is actually only 12 individual human beings, and there's 240 business cards, which if you collect 20 business cards a meet, you're 12 meetings in, which is why it's 14 weeks.
The difficult bit is, well, there are lots of difficult bits, but the main one is believing that you're worthy of it the first time.
I think I felt I had no option as head of household. And I think, because I do think we were talking about imposter syndrome, and I still get it, by the way. We've done 45 mil of property. If I looked at any of my, like a few Christmases ago, I went up to my cousins, we were close, right? My cousin and her husband's got 10 houses. And I drove away from their house up in Fort William, so proud of them and like so overwhelmed by what they achieved, right? I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then about an hour into the journey, I went, oh, but you've got X, obviously a lot more. And it was kind of like, oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
So I think that imposter syndrome, we all get it. I had it the other day. I was like, oh, when will someone find me out? Find you out for what? Don't be a dilly. You just have a wobble of confidence. Yeah. So I think what was very useful was this thought process that I had to do it for the children.
Yeah.
So I wasn't allowed to worry about whether I was permitted, because I had to do it for the kids.
Yeah.
Or I had to do it for my role as mum, for safety for the kids. Yeah.
I really believe that you need that. I've been on both sides. I haven't, as we were saying earlier, always had that drive and that ambition all along. It's only come in the last few years, last 5-6 years. And I've really had that mindset shift. And now I'm just so excited to tell everybody, oh my gosh, you can do this for yourself.
Yes.
And you can, but you just have to decide. And that's one of the reasons that I really love you. And
where does your shift come from?
Where did it come from? Yes, a good idea, a good question. But to be brief, many years, because some of it I knew at a logical level.
Yes.
But I wasn't living it. I wasn't switching my brain.
Yes.
I wasn't consciously thinking of things. I was shifting into the default settings that were saying, this isn't for you, this is for other people, etc., etc. Yeah. And so, but once you just switch it on and it goes, and you've got that fire in your belly, like you did when you've got your kids to think about, you've got other things to think about. You were too busy thinking about these other things to worry about being scared.
You have no option. There is no time in your day, because you've got to wash the school kits and you've got to pack the school bags and you've got to make sure they've got dinner money. There's no allowance for worrying about what will other people think, or can you do it?
Well, speaking of that, one of the reasons why you really came into my world more so, you didn't know this, is when you become successful, and even as a person who started relatively recently,
yes,
you can still attract criticism, but when you reach the levels that you've reached, you can attract a lot more. And what I loved when I saw from a distance, I don't know a lot of the details, the attacks, the vitriol, but
Horrible.
what I love is that you kept going, and that is not easy. So I'd love you to say, how do you do that?
Shall we just say that was a learn? Shall we just say nothing will ever, the first time you were massively attacked, and I think I could consciously observe it. We were being attacked and it was a complete incorrect attack.
Yeah, that was obvious.
Good luck to the person doing the attack. I wish them well, because there's some things obviously going on there, and good luck. Somebody look after them. But actually we were being attacked, and somebody was using us because we were known as being, because there's some real slippery people in property, and we all know that, and I don't want to name anybody because it's not my style. So what was really exciting for this particular website was, here is a completely honest person with a great reputation. So now they can get numbers, and of course then they sell advertising on the back of that. So you logically knew what the focus was. And I was very naive at the beginning. I kind of went to meet them and said, look, here's a tabulated folder for you, and you're actually incorrect, and we could sue you for libel, but I'd rather just have a meeting and show you that you've got it wrong, take it down, blah, blah, blah. And they refused. And at that point, I still thought people were logical, and they just refused to look at the evidence. And at that point, I went, okay, that's not your agenda. So now I've fully understood your agenda. And after that, I took it for fuel. I literally took it for fuel and went, so I have I have a certain £500,000 worth of property, which is in my head nicknamed that attack, because I was like, you're attacking me, I'm going to buy another £500,000 worth of property. And so I took the energy and just went, right, I'm moving forward. But I have seen how it hurts people. I have supported others through it privately. And people get people get distraught, people get floored by it. So the first time you do get floored by it, and I was floored by it, once I appreciated the agenda was actually nothing personal. They didn't care at all about the truth of who I was, and also stop. I was quite cross, so I put a response back going, "This is not true." And for such a nice human that I normally am, I showed a bit of teeth because I was very annoyed. Not true. And so that put some petrol on as well. So I learned, A, not put petrol on. B, people are not necessarily looking for the truth. C, use it for good energy. D, support others who are being attacked. And E, it's not personal. And it is tall poppy syndrome. And I try and practice kindness to wish them well, although, you might occasionally just want to put a little dart in the target, But
watching it, not knowing a lot about all of it, I marveled. I really did that you kept going and you kept going and you kept going, because it's so easy to hide. And that was one of the things that I loved about you, and that was the mindset, and to be successful, you just have to keep going. But most of us don't keep going.
And then also jumping, sorry, I'm a terrible interrupter occasionally, but I did some research around internet trolling at the time, because again, if I got something wrong, I'd want to be corrected, and then I'd sort it out. Do you know what I mean? We once built a house for somebody, we got it wrong, we gave them the house for free. You know what I mean? Because I got it wrong. So then I was like, okay, why does this happen? So I just looked into, and it was fascinatingly but depressing to see that there's so much research to say that women and minorities get more attacked online, and you're just like, oh, same old story. Now, I'm not blaming that, but I'm saying that's fascinating that you're more likely to attract an attack if you're a woman and a little bit more high profile. So then you have to frame it like that. You're not saying that that is because of the reason, but you have to frame that the intensity will be magnified, research showing. So then you frame that and go, okay, I understand the dynamics of this. It's still crap, but I understand. But, so that was fascinating for human nature.
But I think, as you said, well, maybe you didn't say, maybe but as I say to myself, getting through that, you can go through anything. You can go through anything, because one of the most painful things to the human psyche is thinking that other people have got it wrong. They judged you wrongly. And knowing that other people have judged you wrongly, you haven't done this wrong thing that they're accusing you. But
it's so many conversations to the wall, and then I was like, chill out, girl, just totally relax. Yes. So now, just a bit of advice for anybody who do not let that put you off. So we now have a control management spreadsheet. If somebody's rude, it goes into the control management spreadsheet. Lyndon is a genius. He puts it in the control management spreadsheet. We look at it. If we want to delete and block the person, we do. I'd much rather answer the person because that neutralizes somebody being a bit of a dilly sometimes. So we just process for it now.
That is brilliant. And one of the other things I wanted to go on a detour with you on before we circle back to property again is that you are older than me, I think, and you you're actually we're very similar, but you do all this weightlifting, Susannah, and you're on an Olympics style level, and you're seen on social media in hot pants, for heaven's sakes. So I need to know what's going on. What do I need to be doing to get in the hot pants shape?
CrossFit. Well, tomorrow morning we've got a mentoring weekend, and just before the mentoring weekend, I'm going to come do beach yoga right beside the Met, because I'm 10 minutes away from the Mediterranean. So that'd be gorgeous tomorrow morning. Beach yoga with the sunrise. I think physical exercise for everyone's different, but for me, if you're doing those kind of deals, it can be quite stressful. There's no point pretending it's not. So accept that it is. And one of the brilliant things is when you've got a bar and you're coached, and my friend Sunny, we became very good friends, you cannot think of the stress. So actually, it was brilliant to keep in shape. It was brilliant to get my exercise, but it was also brilliant to just have to switch my brain off and to learn something that's very technical is really fascinating to me. And my friend Sunny went to the Olympics, so you can imagine the quality of his coaching. It was world class. So I'm lucky enough to be able to learn from a world class coach. Because I went to Rio and supported him when he competed the Olympics, which was so exciting, and the Commonwealth in Glasgow. So I think it helped property because you have to switch off and you concentrate and you stay fit, because it can be so easy, can't it, when you're working so hard in property.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I used to be a very high intensity exercise person, and I think that yoga is for namby-pambies. What are they doing? They're just sitting there. It looks like they haven't moved. I did try it several times, but now I must admit that I'm a yogi. Well, that makes it sound like I'm good at it, but I do yoga. But we have a hot yoga studio here in the heart of Newport, the cosmopolitan center of the world. And I'm just so grateful that we have that, because if we didn't have that, I don't know where my mind would be, where my body would be. Everything would be out in the streets, I think, because
not everybody has that sport business connection, but it's often prevalent, isn't it? Yes. You'll get like Carl Hutchins, you'll get former footballers coming into business, former athletes coming into business. And they've had discipline, haven't they? They've been able to be coached. They understand routine, they understand practice, they understand putting the work in off the stage in order to get the results. So there's a crossover.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. What would you say to people who they want to get started? I'm sort of biting my words, because I was thinking, oh, we've had a question that I know we're going to disagree on. I'll put it up. We can have an agreement. Maureen Brown has said, I'm selling my home to get capital to start my rent-to-rent business. So would you recommend it? You said you have done this before. How did you find out it worked for you? Now, just to phrase this, or set the scene or set the frame of this. I know that you don't agree with rent to rent. So why don't you give Maureen what you would suggest that she do with her equity?
Yes. And maybe you could give her what you would suggest, because there's no right nor wrong answer. So, so I'm not a fan of rent to rent, even though like people I really like enormously and admire, like Sarah Ponton Ryan and Frances Dolly do rent to rent, and they train and they're good people, you know. But for me, the reason I'm not such a fan of rent to rent, I much prefer people to buy assets, is about time and capital growth. So time, when you're in rent to rent, you have no cap on the downside. If your tenant doesn't pay, you still got to pay the landlord. Well, hang on, didn't Richard Branson say you always cap the downside? But you don't ever get the beautiful, massive upside, which is, apart from 3 of my properties, all of them have doubled in value and some have tripled in value in the last 12 years. And I didn't do anything but just sit in my butt while that happened. You know what I mean? So I like you to be an asset owner. So that's the first one. And then the big thing for me is rent to rent, because my team manage my properties, and it takes quite a lot of managing. You know, I do 2 hours a week on my properties, but I've got a very good team and they manage the properties. And so if you're going to go in and do rent to rent yourself, then you're probably at some point arguing with the tenant about a light bulb, arguing with the landlord about paying for a new washing machine, and then the tenant won't pay for the rent until the landlord pays for the washing machine, and you're not in control. Whereas the same person with the same skills could actually step sideways and go raise 100 grand and go buy themselves the house. So my view is you have to take the pain somewhere. With rent to rent, you can get it quite quickly with low barrier to entry because it's low capital. But then what you do is it's like a boiling frog. You take the pain later because other people are getting the capital growth and you're not. Whereas with fundraising, which is, we're British, aren't we? Who likes asking for money? Nobody, ever. But you take the pain early, you borrow the money, you learn how to source discounted, and then you have the asset for the rest of your life. So it's a theoretical reason why I don't. Like, if you want to do a couple just to get out your day job, fine, cap it at that, and then go buy the assets.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think we are on the same page there. Maureen's now added after while you were talking that she really likes your idea to buy rundown properties, live in them, do them up, and sell them on. So thanks for sharing that, Susannah. And what I believe is both is that it is amazing to buy assets, and I encourage everyone to buy assets, absolutely, because you can't really go wrong. There's no well, I say there's no downside. There's very little downside to buying your own assets, creating long-term wealth, having a legacy, being able to use that equity in lots of different ways. There are lots of different business structures that you can have, the pensions that you can put into, and all sorts of things that you can do to use your assets really wisely and build that wealth. And that's something that I would encourage people to do as well. I think that rent to rent is a business strategy. Yes, it's a cash flow strategy. It's, for some people, it can be a starter strategy, but it's not necessary if it doesn't suit your mode of being.
Yes. And I think as a starter strategy, it's acceptable as long as you are clear when you put a cap on it. So don't basically get into it as another rat race, if you see what I mean. For people who don't have a lot of money, I actually think that sourcing discounted deals and packaging them up is a really great way of going, because you learn the skills of sourcing deals and you learn the skills of working with investors. But even while I'm telling people about it and I create deals for people they can learn, I'm still saying it's great. So brilliant strategy, you learn a lot of money, but do not be fooled. It's still a rat race strategy that you use it as a 1-2. You get the cash in, you reinvest in property. Don't do it forever.
Yeah, no, I agree that, and I really like people who have strong opinions. And let's talk about what you're doing, Susannah. You've done so much already. You bought £30 million worth property, no, £45 million worth of property for 30 million. Let's get it the right way round. And where are you going? What are you doing now? What are your goals now?
Well, my children are now grown up. They're 27 and 23. And that takes some adjusting because I was such a mama bear that it's like, whoa, who am I? Whoa, you know, and a period of a period genuinely of grieving, because I loved having little ones at home, and suddenly they're like able to run their own lives. Oh, but where's the kisses and the cuddles and the hugs and the, you know? So there was that readjustment of who am I, as a, you know, I had children really young. You know, I had children when I was 22. So that took a little period of time. So I bought a new house for myself, and it was all glammed up. And my best friend's a guy, and he's like, it's going to be glamorous and sexy. And I'm like, okay, just did Puppet Master said. And so for me, there are 3 stages in owning property. There's the acquisition stage, which I think most people are probably the most interested in, because it's how do you get started. Then there's the kind of what I would term the maintenance and pay down stage. And I've been at that stage for a while. I'm very keen on paying properties off. I'm very keen on pushing down loan to value. You know, money comes in, we push down, push down, push down. And then the 3rd stage is buying for cash. So I'm between stage 2 and stage 3 now. So, and what will happen is, and you notice it loops back. So you acquire, you stretch, you sleepless nights. I mean, at one point I was, in the early days, don't do this, people. I was 85% loan to value. Don't do it. You know, I didn't sleep very much. And, you know,
you'd be lucky to do it now, let's put it.
But I was, and then it paid down. So the number of properties paid off. And then it's buying for cash. So I'm literally still paying properties off and buying for cash. So we're renovating here, actually, in Barcelona, which is interesting. And the electrician took a nap after lunch in one of our beds. Like, I know. I'm like, okay, let me just figure this out. Is this because you're a terrible builder? Or is there happen to be Moroccan, or is it a Moroccan cultural thing, or is it a Spanish cultural thing? I'm confused. Start working.
Yes, yeah. I don't know. But,
wow. And then I'm taking a sabbatical next year. I mean, I love what I do. Sorry, sorry. I should have said you have to just go, Sus. I'm taking a sabbatical next year. I'm traveling, depending on COVID. I'm hitting a big birthday. I'm celebrating like mad. My code name for 2021 is Bali Villa. Now, I've bought myself a birthday present of, you know, a 1920s apartment near the sea. But I just have this view that next year, I mean, I'll still work because I love it, right? And I'll still produce all the online quality stuff because I love it. And I love when other people, you know, really buzz up from it. But I just have this idea of, you know, when you jump off into a swimming pool and you tuck your knees and you're about to bomb into a swimming pool in the luscious, surrounded by a Bali villa. So that's my code name for 2021.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I really look forward to, I obviously do follow you on Instagram, but I think we're going to be seeing a lot of this blue waters, basically. And
but also buying for cash, because I remember really when I was just getting started, you know, I probably had 2 or 3 properties or something, and I blagged in right during the last recession to the head of property of one of the major banks in Bristol. Somebody I knew was a major developer, and he blagged me an hour's interview, and I must have been the poor man's comedy hour, you know. Because he's obviously trying to, you know, he's got all these big developers going bust on in, and this little girl comes in and goes, "Hi, I've got like 4 houses. Nice to meet you." You know, this huge financial guy. And he basically said some brilliant advice. He's like, if you can find discounted deals the way I can, and everybody can if they do it, I would tell you to buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell, make a large cash pot, because we, the banks, are too expensive. Now, isn't that interesting? And he just decided to be a really great human and give me some genuine business advice. So stage 3 is buying for cash, because the banks ultimately are too expensive.
yes, and you can do much more interesting deals, because the deals you want to do are, you know, in the next few months, as the market is predicted to go down, which would make sense based on what we've been through. And so at that point, that's when the banks start getting a bit tight with their lending.
Yeah.
and want to see a lot more.
Yes.
Where you just want to buy because this window of opportunity is only going to be here for a short while. So I agree, because when you first said buy for cash, I thought, buy for cash, hang on a minute. But I see where you're coming from, because you get total choice over the buying decisions.
Correct.
And
sorry, I get excited and then I start interrupting.
No, it's your choice. It's your show.
It's yours. Cheers, everybody.
Yes.
But so there's two options to buy for cash, isn't there? You can be at stage 3, which means you've been through the cycle at least once, and I'm going into the second cycle. So you're buying with your own cash, and that's where I'm at the moment. Or if you're not yet at that stage, and it does and doesn't matter, then you buy with investors' cash, because look at the opportunity. As a newer person getting into property, investors are getting nothing or negative. In Denmark, they're having to pay the banks to keep their money. It is unlikely that interest rates are going to go up, because they're going to have to keep them down. China is coming up. The Western world is going down. The Western productivity gap in Japan lasted for 20 years. So investors. Oh, I hear a sun coming through. You coming to say hi, Zach? No. So investors get almost nothing on their money. And do they want to invest right now in the stock market? Probably not. Houses are as safe as houses. So the opportunity to raise cash right now is enormous.
Yes.
And so it's a brilliant, if you don't have your own cash, still build that cash pot with partners. And then
And I actually just want to mention, while we're on, before I forget, that I actually know 2 people who are quite skeptical, both of them, about training. David and James. I don't know if they want their full names to be mentioned, but they do talk quite openly that they are on your mentorship and have really valued the support and assistance, and it's really helped them to grow their minds and their money. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. And so that is a real opportunity for people if they want to work with somebody a bit different, somebody who's not like the the property questionable maybe training that maybe I shouldn't. But
I think we want to look at it as a business, don't we? And old school business is increase sales, decrease costs. That's all. So there's 3 resources: time, money, skills, and time's the game changer. And money will, money will move you forward. So how do you marshal and improve your time, your money, and your skills? How do you then own the assets by just sort of clinging onto them and buying them discounted, refinancing, just about making it through the cash flow process? And thank goodness the tenants are paid this month, and checking your bank account at 6 a.m. on a daily basis, because we've all been there. There's no point pretending not. And I've had 2 very good friends go #save Susie's bacon for small amounts of money. But I just want to be very clear that with all that sort of theory, it was success. There's definitely 2 moments where I've gone, help.
Yeah. But as we said earlier, you've got to be on the pitch, and to be on the pitch, you have to play the game. And sometimes you almost lose your shirt, and you've got to keep your bloody shirt on. But
manage your cash flow. But then it's like, how do you increase the sales and decrease the costs? And your biggest cost is always going to be mortgages. So I do agree that a stretch is sensible for a period of time, but you are clear you're taking a risk. So I always did 5-year fix, but then I pay hundreds of thousands of pounds in interest every year, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. And that's with me paying off quite a lot of houses. So you've got to get that cost down as fast as possible.
And I think I'm definitely on that page, because being in the same ballpark as you, Susannah, I think you just look at life slightly differently. Maybe if I was 20, I would look at it a different way. So we actually have a mixture of interest only and repayment mortgages, because we want to repay stuff. We want to move everything shipshape. And get it all into trust. But that's something that I would love to ask you, Susannah, actually, just for personal reasons. So we're still definitely in the acquiring phase.
Yes.
We are in the first 5 years, coming up to 5 years. Our 5 years is next year.
Great.
And we are starting to set up with the different business structure
Yes.
and the SaaS. And
Yes.
I'd just love to know, what has been the thing that you have done to reinvest the monies that you make in your various businesses or in your business structures or in your pensions, that you would
Yes.
say, if I could give you any advice, Stephanie, what to do early on, it would be this.
Yes. Well, these days, I mean, it's the very simple thing of buying everything in a limited company, isn't it?
Yes.
And of course, I didn't. I bought the majority of my properties in my personal name because this new taxation rule didn't exist. So that would be the number one, would be buying everything in a limited company. But I still like, and then old school of, buy 5, sell 3, keep 2, buy 5, sell 2, keep 3. It's old school business sense, and try and every year push down your loan to value. And that terrible one of, and for you 20-year-olds watching, like, you can just laugh, but it's age plus loan to value less than 100. So as you get a little bit older, you want to be pushing down your loan to value always. And then always, for me, most of my yields are 17 to 23%. You must have a yield of over 10% or I won't speak to you for a week.
I love it. And we have got a few things here. Let me just get them up, because you might be thinking, I want to know more, I want to know more, I want to know more, I want to get on the right train. Maybe you are 20, but whatever age you are, if you want to know more about this, there's lots of free information there, and also the paid mentorships that we've discussed. thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk is the URL to go there. And we've also got the Good Property Company on YouTube, and your YouTube is a bit epic, Susannah.
It's been well over 1 million views, which has been quite good fun. But I challenge people to find the one where I thought was a brilliant idea in 33 degrees heat, to do a 10K around Central Park and then shoot a video. And I'm Scottish, I'm quite white, and I go quite red when I've run 10K in 33 degrees heat. So watch that one and realize that property isn't always glamorous. It's like, Wally. And then there was another one where I'd just done a 50K snatch in Barcelona, and I dropped it on my head, and I had But again, I was like, right, I'm coming out of CrossFit. I want to say this thing about property, so I'll just shoot this video. But hopefully, it's really, well, one of our favourite joint people, David, if he's still watching, David Bartley, is just such a brilliant guy. So when I knew nothing about property, David knew tons. And what is wonderful, and David is like the granddaddy of my YouTube video channel, although he doesn't know it, because there were 3 guys, well, 4 really, but 3 or 4 guys that were so kind to me when I was so terrified to walk through the door of a property event. I used to go to the Bristol Pin. I'd be like, oh my God, this is terrifying. David, Nigel, Lee, and Anthony all treated me like an equal. And I'm like, I know nothing, have nothing, and you have all these huge portfolios. And that kindness made me genuinely want to share the knowledge as I got more knowledge, because it was like, pass it on, because they've been so, what a brilliant guy David is. And he just exhibited such thoughtful, decent, and respect. Like Britain, sometimes people have this whole thing about status.
Yeah.
And when you're new, you worry about your status in the industry because you haven't got anything.
Yeah.
Proper entrepreneurs like David Bartlett, almost don't care about your status. They're interested in what energy you've got.
Yeah.
And that is what I adore about our property industry. I don't care if you have, 10 million quid's worth of property or none. I'm interested in your energy and how you're going to get there. That's exciting. And so they were just so generous. I wanted, then as I got the knowledge, I wanted to pass it on. Also, it's a good marketing tool. Let's be really clear about that as well, because people can figure out who you are and whether they want to work with you or not. So let me be really clear as well. It does help on the marketing side too.
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to just quickly say about what you said about people being so generous and people really seeing who you are. But what is amazing is that even for somebody like me who is going into my 5th year full-time in property, I have seen people transform.
Yes.
So even in this short time,
Yes.
you've seen people who've come in with that energy, with that spark, and you just know that
Yes.
they are succeeding, and you can see it. And that's incredibly exciting, that within a year, a couple of years, you can make a little change, quite a substantial change, but within 5 years you can make a phenomenal change.
David, well, you're just a brilliant human, David. You really are. One of my favorite ever evenings in property was, again, when I was starting to, make some changes. It was starting to happen. And it was with Ranjan, Ranjan, who's a good friend of mine, Vansh Patel, who I just think the world of, right? There were 11 of us. We'd been to a property meeting that Ranjan was organising. And then we're like, let's go for some food. And it was Watford. Nothing was open, right? So, and I was almost certainly the least wealthy in that group, but nobody cared. And we ended up eating 99 pence, I think they're McDonald's donuts, because nothing else was open. The car park, apart from my crappy old car at the time, the car park was full of Porsches and beautiful cars. And there were 11 property entrepreneurs on those high stools in this Watford McDonald's eating 99 pence donuts and coffee late at night. And we just couldn't stop talking property. And I just was like, I found, and none of them looked down on me because I was the most inexperienced or I had the least amount of property. They were just riffing off being an entrepreneur and loving it. And I love that. And David, you should blush because you've been hugely influential. Yes.
Yeah, he has. And he is a great guy. Susannah, the time has just gone in a flash. And I would just like to ask you what message you would like to leave people with. Often people are listening and they're wanting to get started or wanting to take things to the next level, but they just don't feel that maybe it's quite for them. What advice would you give?
I would temper it. So there's the obvious advice of do it. Like I would actually say that, do it until they just had to do it. But also then a kind of a second add to that, which is accept how you learn and accept that sometimes you might be a person that needs to get your ducks in a row, and don't be down on yourself. Because we do see a phenomenon, don't we, in our industry where people are a bit rude about course junkies, right?
Yeah.
There are some people who never do anything. But for me, I spent a whole year learning before I, inverted commas, did anything. And so you could have looked in and gone, well, what's she doing? Nothing. So, and I've also, because I've worked on the education side for years because I love it, you do see that it's like something that suddenly catches. You see people putting their ducks in a row, figuring things out, asking questions, and then suddenly they catch fire. The cogs catch, and the whole machine goes. So it's basically 100% do it, but accept your own learning style and accept that, as Vanish used to say to me, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Although, of course, I wanted everything done yesterday, and he was like, you're running up that mountain and you'll get to the top and your head will be between your legs panting. And, and I was like, yeah, I hear you. Let's keep going. And also, I think the other thing is there's nothing more powerful than knowing people for whom it's normal. Inclusiveness that we do have within our industry. Go get to know these folks. So, hanging out with people, like for me, buying a discounted house and buying a house and renovating a house and discovering a Moroccan electrician in your bed, not mine, but someone else's, is not that actually, is a fairly normal thing. Do you know what I mean? So then being around that normalizes it for you. Because I didn't know anybody who'd bought millions of pounds worth of property. My lovely mum used to drive down from Glasgow when she was still working as a teacher and put her marigolds on and try and clean my houses to try and save me £10 an hour because she was worried about me, which is adorable. But what it transfers is a little bit of fear. And that's exactly what your mum should be doing. She should be worrying about you. Do you know what I mean? Whereas by being in a circle where everybody buys houses and everybody owns millions of pounds worth of property, it normalizes it. And then you're like, oh, well, better go and do it then. So it reduces down the barriers in your brain. Yeah. And millionaires are completely normal people. You know,
Yeah.
that's fascinating as well. So I know the time. I have bought 2 houses on trains, right? I'm at the top of the ski lift, right? And what I adore about it is I adore that the entire time. So I had hoodies on the trains. I was going to do a talk and I needed to transfer the money, So I'm transferring like, I don't know, say 35 grand with my phone on a train, wearing a hoodie, wearing a track, you know, wearing joggers and, you know, nice, but nonetheless, you know, nice fit, but still joggers and trainers. And I adore that nobody has any idea that this little 5'2" woman has just got added to a multi-million-pound property portfolio. So it's just normal. You know what I mean? So normalize it by hanging out with people for whom it's just excitingly normal.
Yes. And so many, every time you speak, Susannah, could you stop doing that? There's so much in it that I want to dive into this and then I want to dive into that. But absolutely, environment is everything.
Right.
So now the environment that I'm in, our property portfolio is tiny. Is like a dot on a needlepoint. But in the previous world that I lived in, is like a phenomenal.
Yeah.
I can't believe that anybody could do that. Just normal people in inverted commas. And it is so important to put yourself in those situations. But before we just, is he going to come?
No, he's gone off to see his friends. He's like, put me on social media, Mum. But he's looking very nice. Bye, Zach. As always, well, from the door.
It's probably a bit. My son is also doesn't like to appear on my things and wants to know what's happening with photographs and all of that business. But before we go, one of the things that I've mentioned that I really loved about you is you just keep going. So Ninja Guy got it right with the tank, and.
Not very feminine, is it? But he was right, unfortunately.
And you've got that tank mentality, and that starts in the mind. Yes. Is there anything that you're doing to keep the tank mentality intact?
Yes, there's some basic things. There's a really good book. I personally think the title is awful, so don't be fooled by the title. It's called Authentic Happiness. Oh. And it's written by a guy called Martin Seligman. So about 30 years ago, a new academic movement started to say, hang on, we're using academic study to study mental illness, obviously in order to help people. Why don't we use the same techniques to study mental wellness? And that's actually the base of the wellness movement, is academic study. And this guy was very, very involved and still continues to be so academically. So he's written a number of books on how academic research can show that human beings can make themselves happier to a degree, and what techniques you can use. So one of the things he talks about is a grateful diary. So most mornings, not every morning, most mornings, I'll fill out 3 things I'm grateful for. And it is that thing of, what do you focus on? Because I used to write a diary and it would be like, oh, you know, and what I find interesting about it is when I get a little bit stressed, which is much more rare now because it's, because I'm not taking such great big leaps, it falls away. And then you think, oh, I haven't filled it out for 5 days. And then you fill it out and you literally feel better. So that's my first thing I do in the morning is that grateful diary. Very, very important. And then it's physical stuff, obviously exercise, but eating well, making sure I'm sleeping well, looking after the body for the mind, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And maybe this is a personal question, but do you feel that you're kind of naturally happy, or that you have to really work at it?
My dad is a genuinely cheerful chap. He just gets up and goes, hello. I mean, he'd have his moments, as we all do as humans, but I think I'm usually fairly cheerful. And if things go horribly wrong, relatively soon after, I'll try and extract the lesson and the learn and the positive. But I do love a moan like everybody. So again, I haven't read much of Tony Robbins, but there's a brilliant thing I took on board years ago. He said, you can only moan for 60 seconds. And that's really annoying. Right, I've got this massive thing.
It's not long enough.
So then what you start doing, you start getting to overdraft on your moaning allowable time. You're like, can I moan? Right. And you talk really, really fast because you want, and then you're like, can I nick tomorrow's moan time for today? So I literally limited my moaning to 60 seconds a day. And what was fascinating about that was I then obviously naturally as a human being wanted to go back into moaning, particularly when it was someone else's fault, but I couldn't. So it's like, damn it. And what was fascinating about that is it automatically made you go and solve the problem because you're not allowed to wallow anymore because you've already used up your time.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. That kind of the reason I asked is I think everyone gets their bit of luck in the mentality they're born with, the genes that they're born with, the life they're born into, and they get their bit of, unlucky and luck. They get their mix and they're pushed off into the world. We're born. And then you take it from there. And I feel quite lucky in the fact that it's taken me a long way to find this ambitious streak, which I'm really enjoying now. But on the other side of things, I think it's easier for me to be happy than it is, I've noticed, for other people to feel happy with what I'm doing or what I choose to do, whether it's hard work or whether it's not hard work, whether I'm earning a lot of money or whether, in the days when I wasn't earning a lot of money.
So these are friends and family around you observing in, or do you mean other entrepreneurs?
Well, I just noticed, I suppose it's maybe as you getting older, people are starting to fall apart in different ways, including me, physically, mentally, and in all different ways. And so it just made me reflect a little bit and say, oh, I'm lucky in the way that I can keep happy. And that's more challenging for other people. And I'm interested in the things that people do who struggle in that way to get back on track and to really succeed. And some of the most successful people really struggle to be happy. And so that's what made me curious about what your situation was.
Yes, I'm definitely cheerful. But one of my flaws is not stopping because I love doing. So that's where our mutual friend David is. We used to meet up and go, right, we are not allowed to talk about property for an hour. Right. And then we would talk about life. I know. And then even though we love each other as friends, we were like, can we talk about property now?
Yeah. Come on. Okay, we've got another lovely man on.
This man was one of my other early people. I think the world of Lee as well. Do you know what he used to do to me? The rot bag. And I hope, so he and I kept each other accountable in the really early days for me, where again, he had a major property portfolio. He really knew his stuff. And even though he's in Wales and I'm in Bristol, we would often meet up in London. Do you know what the rot bag used to do? Honestly, because he's super organized, he would flick open his pads and go, the last time we met, you said, I know, because I literally had 3 accountability partners, and hopefully I contribute. He would go, you said you would do, and I'd be sitting there going, couldn't get away from being held accountable by an organised engineer.
Do you know what I thought you were going to say? That he was force feeding you his home brew because, Lee does like to make home brew, which why would anybody complain about that? But look, Susannah, I've said, I'm delighted you could come on. It's been incredible to speak to you. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your knowledge and your fun. And let's go on to that final message to people that you would like to share as we close.
So is that do it, but accept your own pace. And that's what I've learned, that definitely do it, definitely surround yourself by people for whom it's normal, and then accept your own pace and try never to put yourself down in the company, because true entrepreneurs don't massively care how much cash or assets you've got. They care about your spark, really. So if the status is spark, isn't it?
Oh, thank you so much. That's a lovely message to end on. A lovely message for me personally as well. So I really appreciate you, Susannah, for joining us. Really appreciate you for watching and for listening and for making it such fun to be here. I so appreciate all your messages and that you're inspired to keep moving forward as well. And really look forward to joining you again. But for now, it's goodbye from Susannah Cole, and it's also goodbye from me. So see you again soon. Bye
Cheers.
for now. Bye.
Bye-bye.